So welcome, David Sheldon Hicks.
Thank you.
Just been listening to your fantastic talk on some of the work that you've done with Guardians of the Galaxy and Blade Runner 2049 and some of the other work that you've been doing. You work for Terity Studio, which is obviously, you focus mostly on films and gaming. I think that's partly your industry.
Films, games, brands, anything that's dealing with future visions, technology, design, story, that's really what we enjoy.
Okay, great. One of the things I picked up on in your talk was that you're a fan of Japanese animation, which obviously has a clear influence on Ghost in the Shell.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that graphic language of VR becoming much more kind of impactful in terms of our own environment?
Yeah, I think it has to. I think that's where we're seeing so much technology now, really thinking about the functional graphics kind of embedding into a space. More and more brands are wanting to inhabit different spaces, and the physical world is such a key component of that. So how do we bring a layer of functionality and technology into our everyday? And as much as mobile phones and tablets are one way in, if we look at films like Her, where you're just speaking into the environment and something functional is coming back, that feels like the ideal. Me speaking to you, that's just very fluid, natural and human. And the more we can get rid of that technology layer and it just flows seamlessly, I think that's what everyone wants.
Yeah.
That's what we all expect. And it's almost as though technology hasn't quite caught up with our expectations of innovation. You know, we've got so used to everyone innovating, we're all almost a little bit disappointed now when the reality of augmented reality hasn't kicked in just like that. So there's an amount of technology catching up, but there's still so much we can do in terms of content to build up to that point, so that when the technology starts coming through, we can actually deliver on these great ideas. And I don't think we're that far away.
Okay, so in that vibe then, what do you see as being the next big thing for the next 12 months?
It's augmented reality and machine learning. The two combined, I think, are going to be massive. Machine learning in everything. And it's not as scary as I think we portray it in films. I think it becomes more dramatic and interesting if it becomes quite a negative thing, but I can see machine learning being an enhancement on our abilities rather than taking jobs away. I think it would just help us all do our jobs better, in the same way that Photoshop didn't take my job away, and Illustrator and all the other tools that we use. It's just a really clever amplification of what we're doing, and that will cut through everything. And it's the same with AR. It's just giving us another tool, another layer of information that just helps us be a better version of us. And I don't feel as though that's scary.
Okay, great. One of the things that you mentioned very briefly was around medical tech.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering, what do you see as being something, maybe it is medical tech, but in terms of, we were looking at predictions for the future, dystopian influences. What do you think is going to be really positive in that regard?
Yeah, it's really interesting because when we're working on these films, it is often dystopian. So if you look at Blade Runner and Ghost in the Shell, it's less than ideal. But in going through those kind of simulations in your head, you actually play out the ideal. And I don't think there's any part of human society that wants to play it out for the dystopian view. We always want to move towards the utopian. So for me, medical tech, I mean, saving lives has got to be a great thing. And actually fintech, if it's based on a good economy in terms of this is an ideal for a lot more people and the distribution of wealth is enabled through fintech, then I think we're in a really good place. So it's more about just being mindful of how we set off on these journeys and what our end goal is. And so I think that's why we get so caught up in helping people visualize the end goal. Because if you set out that target and you're mindful of where it's taking you, then you don't deviate from that too much and you don't become subservient to the technology and the ideas, and you suddenly find yourself in a tricky place. So I think medical tech has to be, because we all want to live life better, we want our lives to be better, we want to live out our lives in a good way. And I think fintech is just because there's this massive data, and we're still really guessing a lot of the time around where the markets are going or how to use our money wisely. And I just think that if fintech is managed in the right way and there's still a manual analog intervention in that process, then I think it will work incredibly well.
Yeah, it's a reboot of banking.
Yeah.
So, out of the projects you've worked on most recently, which were the ones that you felt most exciting and inspired by?
Am I allowed to mention projects that haven't come out yet?
Of course. Yeah.
So we've just finished working on a museum piece in New York, and it's called Spyscape, and it's a museum about the spycraft, and so we're using tech and projection and design and story to launch people into this exhibition. So we've augmented a lift. So we've taken our AR ideas and actually augmented a physical space. So you get this sense of physically moving up, but the walls just dissipate and you're launched into this other world of espionage. So that was really exciting and totally different for us.
Yeah.
And it's those new challenges that really get us excited. We're working on a lot of films that I can't talk about, but obviously Ready Player One is a big one. Working with Steven Spielberg, obviously amazing, but also just the whole talented team around that. And just imagining where augmented reality and virtual reality might play out. And obviously it's dystopian, but there's just some really amazing human stories that play out within that. And actually it's not technology that's the issue there, it's the human nature really.
Okay.
So it's interesting. And it was just interesting to see how augmented reality and virtual reality really plays out. You know, how do we immerse ourselves into a game space? And how do you design that story within?
Wow, fantastic. I'm messing with people's heads with spy stuff.
Yeah, why not?
Cool. And I think just, we work with a lot of scale-ups. So just in terms of obviously working in the film and gaming industry, if you're a startup or scale-up, what kind of quick tips would you give to a business in that space where you're about to grow, where you're going through a growth curve?
So we bootstrap the whole way with Territory. We three of us just from a spare bedroom and just kind of grew it out from that. What we found worked for us was that don't be precious, accept that failure is part of the process and just move on quickly, and accept that you can't, don't plan this big perfect idea. Try something, learn from it, try something, learn from it. Fail fast is definitely our methodology. And then make sure you do learn from it. Make sure you are putting the data back in and you are being intelligent about those mistakes so it does inform the next decision that you make. That was really key from us. I think not having outside investors let us have the freedom to do things differently. We had a confidence that we could see everyone going in one direction, which was a specialist agency, and we actually said, no, we want a mishmash of skill sets to give us a point of difference, which means that we could tackle any problem, but from a solid grounding, and I think that being able to do things differently to the masses just puts you at an advantage immediately, and people will see the benefit of that very quickly. That's what worked for us anyway.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And anything that you want to particularly call out that's the favourite thing about your own job? What do you love on the day-to-day?
The best thing about my job, as we've become bigger, I started off doing everything, and I'm quite pleased I'm not doing everything now, and that there's much more talented people around me doing a better job of those things. What I've learned that my job really is now as a company owner is to create a great environment for people to work in. So and it keeps coming back. Equality is a big thing, I think, within the studio, and you have to put effort into that in the workplace. I think if you're talking about innovation, make sure you do it throughout. It's about your team structure. It's about questioning your pipeline and process the whole time.
So it's a bit more about delegating to the people around you and not wearing quite so many hats all the time.
But being mindful of that bubble you're creating. Because if you're creating an environment where people can truly live and breathe that thing, then it will all just work out. If you're just hoping that will happen, it won't. You have to put effort into, we think of it as a gallery space. We've got a brilliant gallery, and all of our artists within are given the space to do great work. And if you can build that, then the ethos will live beyond you, and everyone else becomes an embodiment of that idea.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Great tips. Thank you very much.